Hello, church. I hope everyone is doing well as we continue through this June 4th on a Thursday with our daily devotional. Today we finish up chapter 7 and begin chapter 8. I had mentioned in a previous video that Towner includes chapter 8, verse 1 with his section. And while Peterson doesn't, it is part, he kind of does. So here's the deal. And we had this conversation as a part of Psalms because sometimes it plays out a little bit differently. For modern Bibles, we are all very accustomed to having chapter and verse listed. This is a modern construction. And when I say modern, it goes back a long way. I mean, there's been a century and probably even millennia of tradition around having a system in place so that we can more easily find and access a scripture. But in the modern translation, these things are being written out. Very likely for Psalms, they were actually existing as songs that people would recite and have accompanying music on. Same way as we get into the wisdom literature, these are books, and they're not necessarily divided into chapters like we have with a lot of our modern literature. There will absolutely be sections. Part of what Towner is pulling out for us is ways to divide these into sections so that it gives us a little better context and perception of it. But you might run across this dynamic depending on the translation you're using, because sometimes you will find that they run the chapter in the first verse into the previous section. So Towner, when he includes it in the NRSV, is going to be breaking it after the first verse of chapter 8. Because I'm using an online version of Peterson's The Message for Ecclesiastes, it's just giving me chapter 7. I'll do a quick flip over into chapter 8, but the first verse for Peterson does not come under a new heading or title, and he likes using headings and titles. So yeah, for both of them, they are identifying this as a continued section as a part of this piece on wisdom and the importance of learning. I can't remember the specific title for Towner, and I'll give you that in just a minute. So we're going to begin with verse 23 from the New Revised Standard Version. And let me double check that time. Oh yeah, common sense. And this starts back in 7:15, which we did yesterday, and continues through 8:1, which we will conclude with today. All this I have tested by wisdom. I said, I will be wise, but it was far from me. That which is far off and deep, very deep. Who can find it out? I turn my mind to know and to search out and to seek wisdom and the sum of things, and to know that wickedness is folly and that foolishness is madness. I found more bitter than death the woman who is a trap, whose heart is snares and nets, whose hands are fetters. One who pleases God escapes her, but the sinner is taken by her. See, this is what I found, says the teacher, adding one thing to another to find the sum, which my mind has sought repeatedly, but I have not found. One man among 1,000 I found, but a woman among all these I have not found. See, this alone I found, that God made human beings straightforward, but they have devised many schemes. Who is like the wise man, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? Wisdom makes one's face shine, and the hardness of one's countenance is changed. Nice piece. Towner is going to do a really neat bit on that sense of deep, very deep. And the more we start to learn and know, the more we recognize we don't know, or the more questions it raises. And hopefully we can engage that with a sense of holy curiosity, rather than what, very often when I've been reading Ecclesiastes straight through, is just kind of this overwhelming sense of meaninglessness. But it's getting to that place of recognition of our own limitations and acceptance of God's providence and provision in our lives. So we started the reflection yesterday. This is the second part of his reflection. The first part was entitled Modesty and the Attainment of Virtue, which was very appropriate and an excellent context for our study. And this one is the difficulty of attaining to wisdom. When the writer of Deuteronomy contemplated the accessibility of the truth that saves human life from death and disaster, he said, "Surely this commandment that I am commanding you today is not hard for you, nor is it too far away. It is not in heaven that you should say, 'Who will go up to heaven for us and get it for us that we may hear it and observe it?' No, the word is very near to you. It is in your mouth and in your heart for you to observe." And that's from Deuteronomy 30, 11 to 14. Other writers of scriptures have not been as sanguine when they have contemplated ultimate and saving truth. In Job 28, 12 to 28, for example, teaches that the true meaning of things, the reality below all changing phenomena, cannot be known. And it gives a few other texts to go along with that. No one stated this pessimistic point of view more dramatically than did the teacher, who, when undertaking to know the reality behind the realities, cried out, "That which is far off and deep, very deep. Who can find it out?" In our time, we have discovered that reality lies even deeper than Kohelet imagined. Against the apocalyptist of his day, for example, he was quite willing to assert that he knew that the earth would endure forever, and that the great cycles of nature would continue. Beginning with the 17th century, we have lived with Newtonian physics, which in a secular way made the same assertion, that immutable laws provide for stable cycles in the natural order and allow us to predict the long-term behavior of objects as large as our planet and even the universe as a whole. Now the truth about matter has become deep, very deep. Who can find it out? From meteorology to paleontology to astrophysics, science gives us evidence of flux, of chance occurrences, of randomness and chaos. Science and scripture converge now not at Ecclesiastes 1:4, the earth remains forever, but at Ecclesiastes 7:24, that which is far off and deep, very deep. Order there is in the natural world, but it is malleable order, the complexity of which grows exponentially as we learn more about it. And if that didn't make any sense, let me give you a quick Pastor Nick translation. Think about some of your experiences when you are not in a place with artificial light surrounding you. And those moments of clear sky where you're able to look up into the heavens. Our hope and our life and faith is that we might continue to be inspired to awe, to recognize the giftedness and importance and significance of the world and universe around us, but also to use that as a context to recognize our smallness as well as our chosenness, if you will. Now, we continue with Eugene Peterson, and then just give me a minute as we flip over into 8, verse 1. And for Peterson, he entitles this final section of 7 and beginning part of 8, How to Interpret the Meaning of Life. I tested everything in my search for wisdom. I set out to be wise, but it was beyond me, far beyond me, and deep, oh so deep. Does anyone ever find it? I concentrated with all my might, studying and exploring and seeking wisdom, the meaning of life. I also wanted to identify evil and stupidity, foolishness and craziness. One discovery. A woman can be a bitter pill to swallow, full of seductive scheming and grasping. The lucky escape her, the undiscerning get caught. At least this is my experience, what I, the quester, have pieced together as I've tried to make sense of life. But the wisdom I've looked for, I haven't found. I didn't find one man or woman in 1,000 worth my while. Yet I did spot one ray of light in this murk. God made men and women true and upright. We're the ones who've made a mess of things. There's nothing better than being wise, knowing how to interpret the meaning of life. Wisdom puts light in the eyes and gives gentleness to words and manners. And may you find gentleness and peace in your continued devotions today. See you tomorrow.